Warning, these are spoilers.
Well then, lads, let's talk some Sonic Movie 2.
Yes, Sonic the Movie 2 is out! For months, this video is late. Oh goodness gracious, it has Sonic's friends in it! And they're doing cool things! And big epic events! Oh no, the humanity! This movie must be a huge flop! No, it is the most successful video game movie ever, huh? Oh, except for Warcraft. Damn you, Warcraft! Nah, Warcraft is cool. You can have it, buddy. So people do like it, despite Sonic and Friends doing cool things. Huh, who'd have thought? Not Sega. Ah, yeah, Sonic the Movie 2. I freaking loved it. This is a Sonic movie. It has energy. God, I've missed energy with Sonic. Not everyone standing around like a sack of potatoes saying dumb jokes or soulless exposition. No, honest to God, energy. I don't know what genius thought a series about a hyperactive blue hedgehog battling robots must have the energy of bingo night with grandma, but good grief, I'm glad we finally have something with a little spunk again. I described it to a friend of mine as Sonic Adventure Light. The only thing really missing to hit that high is the music. I mean, the music is okay, but it ain't heart-pounding, epic, larger-than-life Crush 40 music or other amazing tracks. Instead, it's more, the usual generic pop music again.
There wasn't a lot of music and themes that stood out for me, really. Hearing the Sega theme at the beginning gave me chills, and I liked the rocking theme of Walk by Pantera, which I wish was a bit longer. There was also the new songs by Stefan Ligar and Kid Cudi, which were alright, I guess. It's a bit odd they use rap music, as I feel Sonic is more associated with rock. It is a shame they didn't have Crush 40 create a new song just for the movie. Also, I think a friend of mine told me you could barely hear the Sonic drowning theme as Sonic was drowning.
Yeah, missed opportunity. Although I appreciated Uptown Funk showing up. At least that isn't another slow rap song or whatever. Seriously, who keeps associating Sonic with rap? Techno, funk, rock, epic orchestra? Those! Anything but rap. Come on. That's Knuckles' domain, if anything.
Personally, I think Tricky by Run DMC was a good choice for the police chase scene at the beginning. It's not really a fast song, but it does have some infectious energy to it. Still, the lack of Crush 40 was really disappointing. Here's hoping for Sonic 3. Oh, and also Barracuda by Heart during the surprisingly awesome Rachel's Revenge scene was a welcome addition to the soundtrack. That's more the kind of music we're hoping for.
Sure, but we're going a bit of off topic. Back to our general thoughts to move.
I rather enjoyed the movie, much better than the previous one, and felt more like a proper Sonic movie. This is what we should have gotten 2 years ago, so I guess the first one was more of a stepping stone towards a proper Sonic adaptation.
Yeah, that's the problem with live-action movies. Cartoons can go completely nuts with their world, but realistic movies always have to relate everything back to the mundane world, or otherwise Joe Sixpack's brain explodes, I guess. Yet, despite having quite a few animated video game movies that did a good job, I thought, they never seem to count as video game movies somehow. I guess there's just something about live action that makes it count more or something. Which makes me curious what's gonna happen with Super Mario.
Regarding the graphics, it's amazing how adorable Sonic, Tails and Knuckles now look. They have come so far since we first saw Movie Sonic as a horrible monstrosity and how close it would have bombed. I love how Sonic is still portrayed as an awkward kid who doesn't know exactly what's going on and says some pretty funny stuff. It makes me wish Sonic has this kind of personality in the games and comics.
It's the only time the cast is ever actually written young. In the games, their age is completely irrelevant. Although the movie does write them a little too young, I think. They're supposed to be 15. Then again, I suppose with their weird upbringing and since they have alien brains, I guess they mature differently than normal teens.
One thing I do find annoying is that being at its live action, it had to remind us there are human characters in a Sonic X kind of way. But I don't find Tom as annoying as Chris, as he's like a lovable dad who's looking out for his kid. But there are scenes set at the wedding that keeps interrupting the flow of the story. Sonic and Tails do something interesting and then someone flips the channel to a rom-com set at an island wedding. And then we had 10 minutes of Rachel going gung-ho on gun agents and her boyfriend. I had to remind myself that I was watching a Sonic movie. But after that, it was pure Sonic.
The wedding scene is interesting. I was anticipating it to be the worst scene in the movie, but the gun twist suddenly flipped around, and now it's my all-time favorite scene of the movie. But we'll get into that later.
I would say this is a movie all Sonic fans will enjoy, and I'm in no rush waiting for Sonic 3, as this movie fulfilled everything I wanted to see in a Sonic movie.
There you go! Those were our general thoughts on the movie! Well, the movie's out for a while now. A very while. So, time we dive in a little deeper. This is Sonic Dissected, after all, so I wanted to discuss several topics one by one, a little more in depth. We got a few guests popping up here and there to give their thoughts on some topics as well. Although, in general, everyone involved in this video liked the movie. So, it's not very balanced, I suppose. I have seen a few negative reviews, like poor Arlo's infamous one. So, we'll go over some of the problems as well. I mean, I love the movie, but that's not because I think it's flawless or I disagree with the complaints the movie has. Just like with many of the Sonic games, like Sonic Adventure 2, I don't like it because it's perfect. I like it because a few of the things included are so amazing that I just don't really care about the flaws anymore and just love it for the sheer balls and creativity it sometimes has. But yeah, let's just get into it. So, without further ado, general plot.
Whilst the first movie was a typical alien buddy movie which you've seen hundreds of times,
Yeah.
this is more of an adventure movie focusing purely on Sonic and friends, where they must find the Master Emerald whilst being pursued by Robotnik and the Echidna warrior Knuckles. This carries over from a plot point in the first movie why the Echidnas were after Sonic and why he was sent to Earth. However, it doesn't explain how these characters obtained their powers, like were they born with it? How did Sonic end up in Longclaw's care? Also, you got the theme that Sonic is still trying to learn how to use his powers and relying on others to help him in a with great power comes great responsibility kind of.
Which I like. They leave details open for the sequels, but without in a way where it feels like sequel baiting. Just extra areas left open for exploration. Better way for later movies to go and expand on these events without it feeling like clumsy retcons.
I'm glad the Owl vs Echidna thing is expanded upon. I mean, it was to be expected with Knuckles showing up, but yeah, they're clearly building some history and lore up. The movie doesn't go in too deep into it, which is good. Keep the focus on the action and leave something for the sequels to explore. Makes it the first time in which a Sonic spin-off really has its own universe and unique elements to itself, like Sonic Sat.AM and Underground had a long time ago, rather than feel like it's anchors at the game lore while still keeping the same general elements and energy we want out of the series. So it isn't like Sonic Boom that completely exists in its own pocket dimension.
For some reason, I see a lot of people say this movie has the plot of Sonic 2 and 3. What, just because the final boss of Sonic 2 shows up, and then that makes it the Sonic 2 adaptation? The movie is really its own thing, and other than Tails and Knuckles meeting Sonic for the first time and a Death Egg robot and Master Emerald showing up, it's disconnected from the games. Besides, personally, I don't even associate Sonic 2 with Sonic and Tails meeting for the first time, since their actual first meeting isn't really shown in-game. I mean, I guess Sonic Origins does, but the original is just, there's Tails. For all I know, they already knew each other for years, and Tails just wasn't there in the first game because he had something else to do. I don't know. Whatever. But yeah, none of that's a bad thing. Heck, it's a good thing. Let the movie have its own universe. I prefer it when other Sonic media go off in their own merry way instead of being shackled with the mess that the actual Sonic games canon is supposed to be at this point. It has a lot more direct elements from the game's taken than Sonic's ATM ever did, and it actually properly gives context and history to the characters and items used, unlike Sonic Boom, yet it has enough of its own ideas and concepts that it doesn't just feel like a watered-down version of the games, like Sonic X was. So, in a way, it's better than those other media. Well, honestly, I still prefer Sonic's ATM over this, but that's probably nostalgia talking. But yeah, I like it.
This movie rocks.
Whoa! It's Alex, my old animation partner from Evil Doc. How are you?
This is what I'm talking about. Explosion, action, superhero shit, gun soldiers being macho guys doing crazy stuff. Finally a piece of Sonic media that I'm not embarrassed about. Hell, I even went there with a bunch of 30-something without any remorse.
Yeah? Did they enjoy the movie?
For the most part, yes. They did say the movie felt a little bit childish though compared to the first one. I was a bit surprised since I personally found the sequel immensely superior.
Childish.
Well, it is a movie about a cartoon hedgehog, I suppose.
Nah, it's more... Okay, in the first movie, Sonic's basically a functioning adult. He lives on his own, he gets his own food, learns the language. When him and Tom travel together, they do dude stuff, like going to a bar, etc, etc. He's basically a kid in age, but acts like a grown-up. The same can be applied to most Sonic characters in general, even in the games and most of the show. They are acting like young adults that are independent. Even confronted to a family dynamic, Sonic has always been used as the surrogate adult or big brother. He's basically the model. But in the second movies, it's different. They treat him more like a kid. I agree with that, it's true. With Daddy Tom having to teach him about responsibilities.
Yeah, that's true. That's definitely the difference between the Sonic movie and Sonic before. He's a lot less independent than Big Brother or even fatherly, and now he's really the kid. Which on one hand is kind of cool, on the other hand, yeah, it does make the movie feel more kiddie, I suppose. I mean, the first movie built up to that, and besides, responsibility is not something you learn from living as a Tarzan boy on an island planet. Getting food and learning how to adapt to the new world is stuff you learn to survive, but responsibility isn't as direct as that. That's more of an advanced skill set you learn when you're more integrated into society. So it does make sense that Sonic doesn't have much of a sense of responsibility yet. He does need a good old dad to teach you that.
I'm not that much bothered by it because there's not a huge emphasis on that stuff, and I feel that we are still dealing with the origin story of the SCU. I just hope they will drop that stuff for the top tier Sonic content coming for the third movie. I think it's time for the Hedgehog's balls to drop. On the other hand, I forced my cousin to go watch the movie, and he did like the new relationship between Tom and Sonic because in a storytelling point of view, it felt less awkward than the first movie, where Tom was supposedly a bro but acted like a dad. Now at least it's clear.
Yeah, in the first movie, Tom never really had a chance to think about what was going on, what his part in this adventure was. He was just kind of dragged along with the adventure and had to deal with situations as they came, just motivated by his vague desire to do something heroic. In this new movie, he had more time to settle into a specific role for Sonic, so as his dad, basically, yeah.
And his self-respecting hero has a code of honor from the parental figure.
And Tom didn't even have to die for it. He's doing a much better job than Bruce Wayne's parents or Uncle Ben.
But yeah, the family stuff. It's the reason why I was kind of dreading the wedding scene at the beginning. That seemed where all the family stuff, kids movie plotting was headed. Great, Sonic will get a lecture for messing up the house. Tom's getting lectured for being irresponsible by Rachel and Randall, causing stress and breakup, just like an Eddie Kids movie. All kids movies always have the scene where the main characters lie at something or get caught and everyone hates each other and the whole movie sucks. And it sucks all the energy out of the movie. I hate it. But it didn't happen. Thank goodness for Gunn being involved.
And in the end, Sonic doesn't learn by getting lectured. He learns by watching his buddy Tails being in danger. It's way more closer to the character to learn with action, and it's keeping the pace of the action story. Closer to a superhero movie rather than a kid movie.
I think the whole family stuff was a decent way to put heart into the movie and keep the characters grounded. Tom and Maddie being good parents is what kept Sonic from losing himself in the powers of the Chaos Emeralds.
But what I really want to talk about is the tone and energy of the movies. I started losing interest in Sonic the past decade because it was a shame of itself. It closed itself from what made Sonic fun to begin with. No more cool friends, no more epic adventures, no more edge.
Just self-deprecation and clumsy attempts to recapture the past, while lacking in ambition to make the new stuff stand out, yes.
But this movie, it celebrates Sonic. Big robots, action, speed, cool new character, lore, background, great use of the game elements, but also interesting new stuff. This is what I've been waiting for so long. The only missing part of the puzzle is to bring the edge back, and I am pretty much optimistic it's gonna happen since Paramount seems to want to grow up with their audience. Plus, Rouge the Bat has a huge chance to be around in the third movie.
Right, and I think that's the main reason why Sonic fans love this movie. Or at least Sonic fans like me, who've become more bitter and irritated since Sonic Free Riders and onward turned the series into a never-ending shitty stand-up comedian routine. All despite this movie's flaws. Plot holes, weird human focus, some kiddie family stuff, it's all peanuts. The fact that we get this big piece of Sonic media that's just bursting with Sonic energy, jumping off buildings, flying, robots, it's just refreshing burst of enthusiastic energy after Sonic has been so restrained and clumsy and awkward and just for a decade. As much as modern Sonic and Boom Sonic and all that feel embarrassed and ashamed of Sonic's past, or above it, and when they try to recapture it, it's always in this dumbass, superficial, surface level way that doesn't understand the underlying soul. The movie just crushes it. And I think that's the main thing that sets people like me apart from, say, poor Arlo. he doesn't come from that perspective. From his perspective, Sonic's always been a happy, colorful platformer, and there's nothing wrong with it. And Sonic Colors is just this great, fluffy Nintendo platformer, and it's always been cheerful and happy, and animals, and up. Just a generic Nintendo franchise like any other. And now this movie is doing all these weird things with the military and weird weddings. Now, to me, that stuff makes sense. That's the Sega I know and love. Sexy cars, beaches, badass dudes, tongue-in-cheek humor, but still with a legit desire to give us a badass adventure. That's Sega.
And it's a huge success. After we've been told that cool friends and humans and badass action is bad for Sonic and he should just be a self-hating fluffy cartoon for babies, the Color Sonic is dying a slow, painful death, and Adventure Sonic is setting the box office on fire. It feels so good to be vindicated.
Now, only the Merry movie will represent that exact kind of lazy, self-deprecating, infantile energy of Color Sonic, and then for the box office, our victory will be complete.
Yes.
You two are loonies.
Yeah, moving on to the stuff everyone wants to talk about. Tails and Knuckles. Because, hey, Tails, he's cuddly, he's adorable.
I really like how Tails is portrayed in the movie, voiced by Colleen O'Shog... just Colleen. I was a bit...
Also, can I say that the creators had no right to make Tails as cute as they did? I mean, seriously.
I'm gonna regret having all these guests, am I? Neil, you're first. Your thoughts on Tails?
I think Tails is a character that's actually pretty hard to get right, since most versions of Tails are probably more bad than good, to be honest. He's actually pretty great in this movie. I mean, he's clearly a fanboy of Sonic without being a simp. And he and Sonic feel like real friends, which is he's useful and resourceful and smart with all his gadgets like Q from James Bond, but without being a Marty Sue like he is in some of the Pontef games. And he also manages to be genuinely vulnerable, but without being a Bella Swan-esque damsel in distress. And I must give points to the films for having Tails carry Sonic. I've not seen any official Sonic media do that in years, and that's something I always thought was quite cool in the games and earlier cartoons.
Because, he's completely stuck in his tech wizard building things mode for now.
Hello, Elise Lowing here. I'd like to talk about the movie's main trio, Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. Before I start, I wanted to recommend 2 Sonic movie videos by a YouTuber named Filmento, How to Break the Video Game Movie Curse. He goes into detail about how both movies utilize their video game elements in a cohesive manner for a movie format, as well as why the characters work the way they do. He's very articulate in his assessments and gives a great perspective from a neutral party. I'm bringing him up now because I will be mentioning some things he says in his videos, and I feel like he says them better than I could. Moving on, I think it goes without saying that when it comes to stories, I love great character writing. Great characters can elevate a story. Sonic 1 had great characters and realistic relationships with its small cast. Sonic 2 takes it 2 steps forward and no steps back. Tails and Knuckles in particular have phenomenal characterization, especially for the Sonic community, who have watched both characters degrade in the games over time. But in this movie, with so many great characters and character interactions, I'm not gonna lie, I was smiling like an idiot the whole time. I would say that Tails is a lot like his Sonic Boom counterpart in that he's a great technician and is knowledgeable. Outside of that, he has a hint of his Adventure 1 self, where he still has some personal issues to overcome, particularly when it comes to self-confidence. I feel his arc wasn't concluded in this movie, but it was a good introduction to it, and it will most likely be one of the themes in the next one.
Really? I thought it was interesting what they did with Tails' backstory. Oh, oops, maybe I should actually introduce myself. I'm Aaron from Sonic Innovation, and Tails is my favorite Sonic character. And it stands as the worst decision I've ever made. Until now, that is. The movie's great, but not perfect. But yeah, Tails' backstory.
It is a bit weird that he learned about Sonic by spying on him, which can be a little creepy. Does he even watch Sonic on the toilet?
Is there a trope where the sequel movie stumbles over itself dealing with an unintended teaser from the previous movie? I got the Back to the Future 2 effect. I felt like the first half of that movie was also struggling with itself to pummel the teaser end of the first movie into submission until it fits the new story they're going for. So you have Doc excitedly calling Elizabeth over to join them and then immediately being exasperated that she's there as the writers desperately try to get rid of that character. Or Doc immediately being opposed to using information from the future to improve the past, despite that's the entire reason why he so desperately dragged Marty to the future to begin with. So the first half of the movie's all busy punching itself in the face and struggling and fighting itself over the teaser of the first movie. All because they treated the first movie silly, and they're off to another wacky adventure end teaser, as if that was a legit cliffhanger that needed to be followed up on. And it kind of feels the same with Tails in this movie. Last movie ends with Tails coming to Earth, knowing who Sonic is, knowing Sonic is in danger, and going to warn him because it makes for a cool end of the movie teaser. But then this movie is like, wait, so why does Tails know Sonic? What danger is he aware of and how? Why does he care to warn Sonic? And the writers don't really have a satisfying answer, so just roll with it. As it is, the movie implies that Sonic became some sort of intergalactic internet celebrity because of the power surge that he caused in the first movie, which somehow immediately allowed creatures from other planets to tune in and watch what's happening with Sonic's personal life. Like he automatically has cameras built into his head or something. And when Robotnik caused another energy explosion at the end, Tails immediately tuned in with his super intergalactic space YouTube to see Knuckles come in and conveniently talk about his evil plans. Yeah, okay then.
I'm confused about how Tails was able to watch the first Sonic movie with us, but the fact that he does so is pretty clever. The child audience for the movie will definitely have seen the first one and come back for the second one. Tails has been an audience surrogate for a while, so his backstory reflects this. He's a Sonic fan in the most literal sense now. Add the bullying backstory and we have an organic way for Tails to grow attached to Sonic. He's surprisingly in character throughout the whole thing. He's quick to blame himself, thinks on his feet, shows some naivete, wants to help all he can, and commits Grand Theft Auto. Wait, what?
They made Tails like Tony Stark with loads of gadgets and deadly weapons. Whilst Podtaff Tails would randomly throw a hissy fit at Sonic or wet himself at the sight of Chaos Zero, this Tails would take action and use his wits and gadgets to solve problems. Hell, he ran over Knuckles in a car. Even the translator in the movie was used for humour a bit better than Sonic Colors.
Anywho, he's not perfect. Sonic and Tails are fast friends in this, get it? And that leaves his character arc hanging.
Since this is the story of how they met, and the movie has a shorter runtime than the games, the creators had to make each scene count.
I would have liked another scene or two. That, or don't have it be knocked out for a giant chunk of his screen time. Tails is mostly there in service of Sonic's responsibility character arc. Tails could have sustained an injury that would temporarily make him unable to help. He would be awake to try and stop Sonic from going alone, but I think this is the extra scene he needed. While Sonic is beating himself up, Tails tries to tell him that even if he screwed up, he can fix it with some help. That's what he learned in the Siberian cabin scene, the same scene when he realized he's not alone anymore. Just have it so Sonic doesn't listen.
I hear people say that the dance scene in the second act drags the movie a bit. After watching it a few times, ultimately I disagree. In fact, I would say that this scene is crucial in helping the two characters bond given the shorter runtime. It also shows how well they work together as a team, shows that Sonic has confidence in Tails after seeing what he can do, and gives a foreshadowing to Tails' hologram device that will be used in the final battle against Robotnik. It also leads into that adorable heart-to-heart scene that wouldn't have worked if the dance was cut.
The bit where Sonic and Tails went to bed was very adorable.
Love it or hate it, it does serve a purpose, to kickstart Sonic and Tails' friendship.
It's sure this scene has a lot of value to it in that regard, but in terms of plot rhythm, it kind of feels out of place because Tails and Sonic don't really have a purpose in that bar. In the end, they just fly across the mountain and just find it anyway there. So I guess in that regard, I understand why people kind of feel it's like filler. But it's very fun filler, so I didn't mind myself. It was pretty fun. I guess that's the challenge of writing these movies. You got all these several, it's like a juggling act with all these balls you have to keep up in the air. Like, okay, I need to give Sonic and Tails bonding moment. I need to establish all these gadgets Tails has that he uses later. But at the same time, it also has to be flowing naturally through the narrative, and every challenge they go through has to be there for natural reasons. It's quite a puzzle to figure out, so yeah, I guess that's the problem with the whole dance sequence. There's a lot of value to it, but it doesn't quite flow in the story. But hey, as long as you're entertained, I guess most people won't mind in that case, so there you go.
Additionally, isn't it a little strange that Sonic doesn't apologize to Tails for him getting hurt? He realizes that his friends and family are there to help now, I get that, but Tails wasn't there for the conversation between him and Knuckles. Would it be too much to ask for Tails to land the plane when he arrives and have a little closure?
Story rhythm, have to move to the climax. Bit weird to have yet another quiet moment after the one with Knuckles already. I'm sure Sonic apologized on the way there. I mean, how long is the airplane ride from middle of the ocean to Green Hill? I'm pretty sure that's quite far.
I understand he's mostly there to be in service of Sonic's arc, but he is a character in his own right, and it wouldn't take much to make the best Tails in years. I'm not going to complain too much. Tails is my favorite character in the franchise, but my least favorite character in Lost World and Forces. Sonic Boom is far from perfect, but its franchise is home to the best version of post-adventure Tails. He's been mistreated over and over again, much like in his backstory.
This Tails really feels like it's a continuation of Sonic Boom, even including the voice actress.
Colleen O'Shaughnessy brought her A game with his voice, and I would go as far as to say that this is her best performance so far. Don't get me wrong, she was a great fit for Tails from the start, but you could tell that she gave it her all in the movie.
Yeah, no more show for nerds. This is the big screen. Must be fun being upgraded from regular cartoonists to right up there with the big movie stars.
And she is another example of how these movies are for the fans. Instead of getting a high-profile celebrity to do Tails, they got the current voice actress that the fans know and love, someone who knows the character inside and out. And Tails' friendship with Sonic has a unique spin, if you'll pardon my pun.
Puns! What are you, Pontath?
Overall, I was terrified they were going to make him into an exposition machine while all the screen time went to Knuckles. That's kind of what happened, I suppose, but they gave us a heartfelt, genuine origin to his friendship with Sonic. They really seem like surrogate brothers now. It's the cutest thing in the world, and he's the cutest thing in the world. This is unironically my favorite Tails design.
Tails was done justice in this movie. He was humble, earnest, adorable, tech-savvy, and reliable. This is the Tails that fans wanted to see return.
I even like his interactions with Knuckles, like a little big brother kind of relationship.
Overall, they did great, but there's still room for improvement. Maybe we can get that character arc finish in Sonic 3? Fingers crossed.
Pretty sure Sonic 3 has a lot of more stuff to cram into its plot, so I wouldn't count too much on it. Honestly, I'll be surprised Tails really gets any screen time in the next movie, but we'll see. I also love at the end how Sonic sums up everyone's power. He is the fast one, Knuckles is the strong one, Tails is the brain. Except then, it's only Sonic and Knuckles who come up with all the plans, and Tails does nothing but shoot his gun. So he's more the gun guy. Tails the gunslinger, the gun enthusiast, I guess. Though I suppose he did come up with the genius find the weak spot strategy. But yeah, sorry Tails, you ain't voiced by a celebrity, so you don't get to make any smart decisions, even if you're the smart one. Anyway, next topic.
I really like Knuckles in this. He's finally back to his old tribal warrior self, while still being gullible, but without being an idiot, because originally that was never his characterization.
Well, the thing with Knuckles is not that he's not stupid at all. I mean, he does have his dumb moment, but its stupidity comes from being hot-headed and naive and a bit of an outsider. Like, when the stupidity flows naturally from who he is as a character, then that's fine with me. What frustrates me is in Pontath and Sonic Boom, when it just made him stupid on all levels, like even on things that he should have a lot of knowledge about, like how to survive in nature or how to approach a fight and all that. Like, that should not be stuff that he's stupid at. You know, the difference between like an actual character who can make mistakes from who he is versus just being this flatline, oh, he's the stupid one who always does the most stupid thing possible. Flanderization and all that.
They could have easily just made Knuckles the dumb meathead that he's been portrayed as for so long, but instead they took more care with it. Most often his stupid moments are born out of a lack of knowledge rather than a lack of intelligence. Even Sega has forgotten that Knuckles is actually supposed to be pretty smart. And while I'm sad that this movie didn't portray him that way either, at least he's mostly just ignorant instead of dumb. Still, there are a few moments where he is explicitly being dumb for a joke, like him reading out the text messages between Sonic and Tom and getting stuck on the ... or pulling a Teen Titans Starfire and adding thes and ofs to words he's unfamiliar with. I suppose part of the problem is that English does seem to be Knuckles' native language, strangely enough, as it is for Sonic, Longclaw, and Tails. It's not that Knuckles is having trouble translating words, they're just words he's unfamiliar with.
I would even argue that he's the straight man to Robotnik's comic relief. He may not understand how technology works, but he is very serious in his way of doing things.
I think what, to me, really helps the jokes with Knuckles being kind of dumb in this movie is that this movie at least goes out of its way to make his mistakes feel more natural to what kind of character he is, and the movie goes out of its way to give an actual proper setup why a certain joke happens. For example, everyone loves the joke where Knuckles smashes the computer to defeat Hologram Sonic. The classic, haha, caveman doesn't understand television gag. However, I love the fact that the movie goes out of its way to give Knuckles additional motivation and that he watches Robotnik already picking a fight with the hologram Sonic. Jim Carrey's all goofy and acting out his rage against Sonic with the hologram, pretending to fight it beforehand. So as a result, it gives Knuckles a bit more of a motivation to think that the Doctors are legitimately having trouble fighting this hologram Sonic. It's little details like that I absolutely respect in this movie, as this is the polar opposite of the comedy of modern Sonic, where there's rarely ever proper motivation or setup why characters do or think anything, and stuff just happens because the writers wanted to go straight to whatever punchline amused them. Whether it fits the character be damned.
Oh my goodness, talk about major improvement. Knuckles is multi-layered in this movie. He's focused, disciplined, has a strong sense of duty, and is surprisingly eloquent in his speech.
It is a shame that I don't think they have him translate any ancient languages in the temples, as that was always his main gimmick in the Jason Griffiths era, for lack of a better word. At least the only gimmick with any dignity, anyway.
I love how this movie brought back 90s Knuckles, an aggressive threat who wants to hunt down and destroy Sonic like he's the Terminator or something.
As far as I'm concerned, Knuckles, like Shadow, they're characters that desperately need context to work. Give him a Master Emerald to protect or treasure to find, and he's one of the coolest characters, but don't give him anything to do and just drag him into the plot because he's the main character, man. And, well, there's a reason why I keep using that screenshot of Knuckles yawning in the backseat of the car in older Sonic Dissected. That sums him up completely. He's just there pointlessly because, well, he's allegedly the main character, so there he is, I guess. Although, of course, Sonic Forces proves that even giving him a mission doesn't always fix him up, but oh well. And then Sonic Frontiers did a very good characterization on him, even though he has no mission or anything to do, so I guess my assertion is wrong. Damn. Dissected cancelled! I failed! Either way, Knuckles is back on a mission in this movie, so he's the best we've seen him in ages.
As I've said, I like how he acts like a galactic space warrior on a strange and unfamiliar world, teaming up with an evil scientist. Over time, you do see Knuckles questioning Robotnik's behaviour and wondering if he's on the right side. He grew up believing the Emerald will restore balance and that the Owl Tribe are the enemy. And what he believed was wrong all his life has changed him. He can follow his own path.
He also shows to have a strong sense of loyalty. Aside from his eventual team-up with Sonic and Tails, there are at least 2 moments in the movie where Knuckles shows blatant disdain for Robotnik's lack of loyalty. The first is when he leaves Stone behind, openly calling him deadweight, and Knuckles calls him out. The second being on the mountain when Sonic chooses to save Tails instead of getting the compass back. Knuckles shows respect, and Robotnik calls it a weakness, prompting a disapproving look from Knuckles.
That's when he begins to become an awesome character, where he becomes less threatening and becomes the warrior buddy who's not familiar with Earth stuff or being a hero.
As a foe, Knuckles is a formidable force to be reckoned with, but as an ally, you know he has your back. Speaking of, I like the small message of forgiveness here. It's not groundbreaking or anything, but it is clear that Sonic had some bitterness towards Knuckles because he was an echidna and part of the tribe that caused him to lose his mentor, even though Knuckles was not directly involved in the fight. At the same time, Knuckles had bitterness towards Sonic because Sonic was the reason he lost his whole family. Both of them had bitterness towards each other, but they also realized that the conflict affected both of them and they were doing what they were doing for the sake of those they cared about. They found common ground and were able to put their bitterness aside for the greater good. To put it poetically, you could say that they were representations of the conflict between the two clans, and the only way that they could stop the war was by ending the cycle not with the destruction of one side, but by coming together as friends to retrieve the Emerald. And in forming a new order, they have put the past behind them and formed a friendship. As I said, it's not groundbreaking, but I like the message nonetheless.
Don't make war, make baseball or something. Actually, does baseball have like football hooligans? Because then we're still getting a war. Ah, sports fans. Not as sophisticated as us Sonic fans.
There's this thing I like to call out of character while in character. It's when a character does something that is incongruous with how they would normally behave, but it feels oddly appropriate for them when in the context of the current situation and doesn't break their character. The baseball scene is what I would consider a Knuckles out of character while in character moment. He's so mission driven, he doesn't really have a concept of doing something just because. No high stakes, no grand quest to accomplish, just pure fun. And yet he manages to translate it into a game of conquering the bases.
What fascinates me about the whole baseball scene is, I said before, up to this point I always thought Knuckles is a character that requires a mission, a goal. Without it, he's an empty shell. And yet, this movie actually shows us Knuckles when he doesn't have a direct mission, and he reverts back to being a kid and having having fun and being all excited. And that was a very interesting and shocking new turn for me. Because here we actually get to see what the characters do in their downtime, which the games almost never really care about. So one of the rare times the story acknowledges that, yes, these are supposed to be kids or teens and not full adults. Even if Alex and her friends hate that. But, well, that's what this movie is doing, so there you go.
And the look of joy on his face when he experiences fun is honestly adorable. And the dessert quest and victory chariot, I love it. And the cherry on the sundae when he picks Tails up and puts him on his shoulder. Oh my gosh, I have no words. That is just too cute.
How often times you guys bring up how cute everyone is. I'm kind of surprised this movie's merchandise doesn't have like 1 million plushies of them.
Seriously, Knuckles is so formidable and yet so adorable I could just hug him. He'd probably punch me across the room and it would be totally worth it. As for the voice acting, Idris Elba nailed it. He brings a lot of weight and gruffness to the character and adds a unique trait to Knuckles.
Idris Elba did a good job.
I love how he gives him a bit of an accent. It really does distinguish him from Sonic and Tails, emphasizing that he came from a different place. And when Knuckles breaks out and has fun, he still manages to make him believable.
Oh yeah, I love the Knuckles and Sonic fight in the temple. Wish the fight in Sonic and Knuckles was that awesome.
Indeed, indeed. Right, next topic. Let's talk about G.U.N. G.U.N. My favorites.
Bringing G.U.N into the movies is such a good idea. Think about it. What better way is there to incorporate the human characters you already have? I predicted that Rachel's new fiancé was a G.U.N agent. I couldn't think of any other way for them to be part of the wedding without some wild contrivance. Operation Catfish is not only neat writing, but comedy gold. I laughed the hardest when the priest opened his Bible to show a taser.
I love Gun. They're great. I love it that they just really made him a bunch of crazy dudes, all Chad and super macho, carrying guns all over the place. That's amazing. I love it. Just marry off one of your top agents to Tom's crazy sister, just in a desperate hope to get some snippet of information on Sonic.
I do like how the general from the first movie turns out to be the gun commander, but like how Roger might portray him if he was on holiday and has more of an arsehole personality.
Man, this is the stuff I love. That's great.
Like in Sonic X, the stalking teacher of the government sending armored soldiers to get Sonic to a party. That's awesome.
It's nice to have a G.U.N commander that doesn't take himself too seriously either. I hated Walters in the first film. I couldn't read the Olive Garden jokes. Were they just jokes? Were they tongue-in-cheek but still genuine advertisements? Turns out they were just jokes. They weren't jokes that fit a Sonic movie, but I think the second movie made these jokes much better. Tom calling him Olive Garden Guy perfectly sums up his character. He's the complete opposite of the commander from Shadow the Hedgehog. I don't know if he'll ever be threatening or what his role will be in... Wait, it's okay to talk about spoilers, right? Wait, duh, of course it is.
Well, let's save up the spoiler section for later when we talk about our thoughts on Sonic Movie 3, I guess. Now we're just sticking with Gun. Man, the balls on them just have this very long sequence with Rachel and Randall. Like, normal circumstances, I would have hated it because they didn't really have an investment in those characters, man. The whole sequence is just so crazy, I just loved it anyway.
The energy is right, though. Rachel screaming and attacking the military in a golf cart. It's like the humans in Sonic X. Not your badly amputated English version of Sonic X. I mean a real funny one.
I love them just kind of owning their name, too. Like, it's a silly name, he doesn't care. It's like, yeah, we're Gun. So what of it? Besides the obvious English pun, wasn't Gun also the name of the Japanese army or something? What was it?
Well, Guntai is accurate, but just Gun is also acceptable when referring to a military. That's where the word shogun comes from. So yes, Gun is a rare and glorious little double pun where it's funny in 2 languages.
That new G.U.N logo, though. The old one is very recognizable, I'll admit, though it doesn't really look like a logo for a military organization. The movie's logo adds stars and leaves, making it look more like something America would have cooked up. I also love the G looking like a shield, puts the Guardian in the G for sure. And I've seen fans make some happy mediums between the 2 logos, and it would be cool to see a colored version in the future. I'm a graphic designer, I had to talk about this.
Fair enough. But of course, the true master of logos is no one other than Dr. Robotnik, Dr. Eggman himself. Oh, what a handsome fellow, isn't he? So let's talk about him for a moment, shall we?
Once again, Jim Carrey did a great job as Dr. Robotnik. Whilst he's still skinny and has a less bushy-looking moustache, he does act like a typical comic book villain, and he is supposed to be constantly evolving.
I think what really helps him in this movie is that the jokes are way funnier. There was something about the first movie where none of the jokes really worked or always felt kind of off or just weird. Wasn't a big fan of Jim Carrey Eggman myself, but considering I hated what Eggman was doing in the games, being utterly dull and boring and just confusing old man who needs his diabetes medicine, I was fine with Ace Ventura taking him over. At least there's some energy to that. But yeah, this movie has way more actual Robotnik moments. Man, my favorite moment is all the way at the beginning with the mushroom figure resembling a crummy-looking Sonic that dies horrifically in the process of Eggman making his coffee. That's exactly the kind of goofy pettiness I love seeing Robotnik do. That's great.
There were some moments where he was 100% Robotnik, such as the chase in Siberia and when he was laughing his arse off at Knuckles, who thought he was his friend. Compared to game/comic Robotnik, he seems to act more competent, and as his exile on the mushroom planet drove him batshit insane, he can act like a right manipulative bastard, getting Knuckles to take him to the Emerald. In the first movie, he never really outright stated he wanted to take over the world, just capture and dissect Sonic. Here, he's gone full supervillain, seeking ultimate power to dominate the world and the universe beyond.
Well, the first movie also kind of implied that. After all, he's deliberately going after Sonic because he's a power source, so... Not to mention he has that obsession about being bullied at school, where he's all about fighting back and being so powerful nobody can punch him back. The implication where he was going was there.
I've also noticed he's not as abusive towards Stone, but more like a lackey he can just push around. I'm surprised Stone is 100% loyal to Robotnik. I think there are some people who want Stone to turn against Robotnik, but I do like how they act like an evil romantic couple.
It's a very unique dynamic, yeah. I mean, if Stone would have just fought back after being backstabbed, it would be kind of over with and kind of cliche. This is more interesting to see where it's going.
Also, unlike Game Robotnik, he can get under Sonic's skin where he tries to piss Sonic off into attacking him. This was the problem I have with Pontiff-era Robotnik, is that he doesn't really act very intimidating and Sonic doesn't find him all that threatening, just annoying and silly. He does act in a very threatening way in Lost World, but that was towards the Deadly Six.
And utterly wasted because it didn't go anywhere, but never mind the Lost World hating. Back to the movie.
I want Robotnik to act like a witty arsehole as if he's superior than everyone with a huge ego and zero compassion. Like an internet commenter.
That is internet commentators from other videos and other websites, of course. I mean, the people listening to this video are all amazing and great and will leave wonderful comments for me to read and I will enjoy them all. Hit the bell and subscribe and...
Also, they've done something very interesting with how he uses the Master Emerald, where instead of hooking it up to a machine, it turns him into a god. This is an amazing idea, giving him superpowers and would make the kids terrified. Yes, have Robotnik give kids nightmares. It's like Satya Robotnik 2.0. I was hoping he would use his powers to roboticize people, like turn Stone into a robot, or turn a few gun soldiers into SWAT bots.
Ooh, that would have been interesting.
But I like how he uses it to create his giant robot of death, and had fun making it move accompanied to a few seconds of Pantera.
That design is amazing. Yep, terrifying and funny at the same time. Exactly how I like my Sonic.
Even though Jim Carrey said he's considering retiring from acting, I'm hoping he's going to stick with Robotnik in future movies, as he seems to have fallen in love with the role.
We'll see, we'll see. One thing's for sure, nobody can replace him. At least in a literal sense, an actual Robotnik replacement. I'm sure Agent Stone could fill his shoes to a degree. Might Jim Carrey not return? But of course, this ain't just a movie, oh no. We got a whole prequel comic book as well to give us valuable extra context to this movie's rich and deep lore.
Since these Sonic comics are more of my forte, I obviously went and got this prequel comic, and it was nice. Much better than the mini comic that came out with the Blu-ray release of the first film, where it was just an abridged version of the film's plot.
The comic contains Sonic the superhero on an early adventure to stop a bank robbery while trying to hide himself from Tom and Wade the cops. We got Agent Stone following Robotnik's instructions left to him in case he disappeared, where he unfolds his evil plan to take over a coffee shop. We got Knuckles punching a monster and being best friends with aliens. Got Tails making the other zones from Sonic 1 and 2 canon to the movie, and we got Robotnik go through a much darker version of the Super Mario Bros. Movie as he gets high on Toads and then burns them all to death. Happy endings for all. So, what do you guys think of these amazing stories?
The one opportunity to give Tails more backstory, and they blew it.
Yeah, that's the frustrating part, isn't it? Because that's the biggest question you have. Like, what were the circumstances, how Tails knew about Sonic and all that? But they don't go into it at all. We don't get any glimpse of where Tails lives or what he does. They know it's straight up to, oh, look, here's the other levels from Sonic 1. I mean, it's nice to see the other zones from Sonic 1 get some attention, other than freaking Green Hill Zone all the time. But other than that, yeah, what a waste.
I wouldn't say the prequel is without merit. Firstly, Tails' story confirms even more that Sonic's powers are likely Chaos powers. With all the sparkly new movie lore, it makes sense. He can use the Chaos Emeralds more than anyone else. Unlike the games where Sonic's inclined to the Chaos Emeralds, they just make it so Sonic already has Chaos energy. Welp, he is a chaotic good. I'm funny.
Being that funny is my job. Man, what I absolutely love, ironically, sarcastically, I guess, is the movie really seems to imply that these bounty hunters Knuckles is with might be more important to Knuckles' backstory. Like, did we just get a quick glimpse of them? It's like, ooh, look at these characters. Oh, how important are they? Where do they come from? Buy the prequel comic now to find out who these exciting characters are. And they actually read the prequel comic, and then it's still like, look, there's bounty hunters here, I guess, that Knuckles met. But hey, don't worry, in the movie they're going to play a much bigger role, except that they don't, so. Both the movie and the comic kind of pass responsibilities on writing these characters properly to each other, so in the end, they never get any point or purpose whatsoever. I'm gonna assume they're gonna show up in a Knuckles TV show. For now, they're just funny.
Speaking of funny, the first two stories, Hedgehog Day Afternoon and The Secret of My Distress, are pretty good. And Bryce Thomas is such a good artist, oh my god. Sonic's story is funny, charming, and even a little intense. It's weird to see comic character versions of Tom, Wade, and Stone. I don't know, something about them being real people. I didn't even blink at a comic version of Jim Carrey. He's already a living cartoon.
Looks pretty good. They really nailed the looks of the actors. I love it. Great art. Kind of confusing how there's sometimes random anime kind of humans in between too, but oh well, whatever.
Stone's story is the best out of all of them in my opinion. We learn about the Robotnik manifesto, which also appears in the official novelization for the movie. It makes me think it was in an old draft for the film. Not only that, but more Stone! This comic expands upon his character nicely because he rarely interacts with anyone other than Robotnik.
He really wasn't much of a character in the previous film, shows up just to praise Robotnik's actions and then completely disappears halfway through the film. Here we see he's more than just a fanboy. He has brains, he knows tech, he carries on Robotnik's legacy, like what Neo Metal Sonic did in the IDW Sonic comics.
He's such a good foil. He appears composed and polite in contrast with flossing Jim Carrey over here. He looks like the kind of guy you see on corporate photos, smiling and happily working his minimum wage position. You find out that underneath, he's heartless and cold, but most of all, loyal. It's a shame he wasn't used more in Sonic 2. Stone is the best Eggman lackey ever, period. I'm not kidding.
There's just something about blind love and toxic relationships, I guess. But hey, Stone seems to enjoy it, so that's good then, I think.
Agent Stone is quickly growing on me. I'm actually glad that my theory that he was a figment of Robotnik's imagination was fully debunked, because now we have this amazing character who is actually loyal to Eggman and shockingly competent as well, which is shown off in the movie, but really exemplified in the comic.
I would say more about Knuckles' and Robotnik's stories, but there's so little to them. The only thing of note about Robotnik's is that there's a panel or two where he eats a mushroom and gets high. This is in the novelization too, so I'm wondering if this was a joke they cut out for the film, just like the Robotnik manifesto. I'm glad they left it out. I already saw a good dinosaur.
Which coincidentally turns out there actually was a deleted scene in the sequel where Robotnik does get high on.
Wonderful, wonderful. But now we're going to discuss the most important aspect of the movie that everyone's been waiting for. Real spoilers. Sonic the Movie 3, yes! What are our thoughts on Shadow? Will the next movie be a Sonic Adventure 2 adaptation, filmed in London apparently? Will they include Sonic Adventure 1 elements for the Owl and Echidna tripods? Will there be Owl and Echidna tripods? So everyone, you'll get a turn to explain your predictions of Sonic Movie 3. Melting Man, you first.
Well, there are certain issues that
Is what I'd like to say, but I only hired the theater we're in for about 50 minutes and we're about to get kicked out, so end of the video. Here's Lucas Sala's real-life reactions to Shadow instead. See ya!
Sir, There's something else. When we were wiping Robotnik off our database, we found something. A file buried deep in our system and dating back over 50 years.
Oh. What was it?
Coordinates, sir.
Coordinates? To what?
A secret research facility.
What?
It was a black site, sir.
No!
Oh my god!
Someone worked very hard to keep this hidden.
My god. Project Shadow.
Oh my god! Yes! Awesome!
Oh my god!